going to talk about the latest movie starring the one, the only, an unfinished business favorite, Nicolas Cage, with his new movie, not that he directed it, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, where Nicolas Cage plays Nicolas Cage, who is hired to appear at a South American olive company head's birthday party, and who is the world's biggest Nicolas Cage fan, but he's also kind of implemented by the CIA, FBI to go undercover to help them bust this guy, because they believe that not only is he, a crime lord, but also they kidnapped a politician's daughter just so this politician will drop out, and he's not cartel friendly. Now, having said all that, me and Mr. Joseph saw this movie together. I will let Andre go first with his review, and then I will express my feelings towards the movie.
I thought it was funny as hell. I felt it was, on one hand, a love letter to the man and his work. You see it all throughout the movies with Pedro Pascal's character, citing all of his films, having all the memorabilia in his house, and just generally really infatuated with him, much like a lot of moviegoers are when it comes to Nicolas Cage. And at the same time, I like that he's in on the joke. It's not just, we're bashing a man who's been spending the last couple of years doing a bunch of bad movies, with some exceptions, but it's really this is a guy who's in on the joke. Yes, he's eccentric. Yes, he has weird tastes and, takes on roles that are sometimes very offbeat, but he still gives his all, no matter what the price range is for him in that project. He is just an icon. And I love all those scenes, especially the angle of him talking to himself, but it's like a de-aged Nicolas Cage from the Valley Girl era, and the back and forth that they have is some of the most hilarious stuff that I've seen on screen. And Pedro Pascal was charming and lovely in this movie. You think he's going to be going one way as a character, and then it turns out not to be. He's likable all the way through. And the only issue I had with it, honestly, was the third act. I was kind of drifting off a little bit, because you have a subplot where Nicolas Cage is so caught up in his career that he's divorced. He has kind of a strained relationship with his daughter, which we've seen millions of times in other movies. And they end up in the plot where they end up supposedly being taken to this villa and get into the crosshairs of the bad guys in the film. So it's one of those things where it's we're just adding this jeopardy, and it kind of loses a little bit of steam, but it's not, it picks itself back up before it's over, which I like. And then the other issue I had was Tiffany Haddish. And I'm going to tell you why, because I thought about this after we saw the movie. So she's the CIA operative that recruits Cage when she tells him, hey, this guy that's invited you to his little birthday shindig is actually an arms dealer that we're going after. And she gets her funny moments. She plays up her fake fandom of Nick Cage and only liking his kid movies like The Croods too. And then trying, I love the scene when he's trying to avoid the bad guys, he's trying to get some information, and he accidentally smears himself with that finger paint stuff that causes him to start almost going out of consciousness, and then they sort of redo the scene from The Rock at the end of the movie. So I thought that was funny, but there was a point, without spoiling the film, where she flat out disappears with no explanation, and that kind of struck me as odd. I felt she was going to be more prominent, and then all of a sudden we just took her out, and it didn't really make much sense to me. Otherwise, I loved it. I would recommend the film.
I would recommend the film. I didn't love it as much as you did.
Okay.
I thought it was funny throughout, but I think I have the opposite, well, not the opposite problem, but the opposite idea you have. I just felt with Nicolas Cage being in on the joke, it kind of messed it up a little, because I just felt like he, as always, he's giving 100%, but I feel like he is trying to play up the comedy more rather than being committed so much, even though he's playing himself. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like he was going to try to be farcical rather than just staying grounded as himself. And I guess that was my it's a minor problem, but it was something that irked me throughout. And like you said, because there are plenty of scenes where he's hilarious. Like you said, the when he takes the accidentally puts the stuff on his face and he's starting to lose consciousness. That scene is like pure comedic gold, throughout. But I also had the same problem you did with Tiffany Haddish's character, and it's not exactly her fault because
Yeah.
my thing is she's good in the initial scene when she's going to meet Nicolas Cage for the first time and in recruiting him. But it was like after that, she didn't really have anything to do. Like you could have hired any other actor just to play that role if that was what you were going to do. And then you play her up as an important character. And then, like you said, towards the end, her character disappears and then is totally out of the movie. And, we get no real, like, any payoff or any emotions for it. It's just like, oh, yeah, okay, she's gone.
Yeah.
And the other thing, like you said, is that third act to me, it wasn't I guess, the whole family situation, because obviously that's at its dramatic heart for him to, try to be a better person. And, I thought it was inventive the way they made it seem like they were coming there, more for, an emotional therapy session for them to write this screenplay. And he's thinking, oh, he's trying to hold them hostage over me because he knows that I'm undercover or something like that. But this is where the problem of the movie exists for me also, is that in Act 3, I don't feel like this is the first time director making the film.
Yeah.
And the action sequences weren't that great.
No, they weren't.
It was just like, it wasn't like if you had maybe a more skilled, or not even a more skilled, but maybe a veteran director, like at the end when they do the infamous Michael Bay shot, it would have been a little more obvious rather than the shot that you get watching the film. I know that's more of a film geek thing, but that bothered me, obviously. And I mean, I loved Sharon Horgan playing his ex-wife because I love her television shows, Catastrophe. She's a great writer, great actress. Plus, I like her little accent, and it's never explained. Why did he marry a woman with such a strange accent? And then later in the film, she has to act like she doesn't have an accent in the film. So I thought that was like strange but good. I like that they pepper various Nicolas Cage movies into their dialogue, like guarding Tess is very important in this film. And the National Treasure movies. But sometimes you're like sitting there, why didn't Vampire's Kiss get a shout out?
Or Xander Lee.
I mean, obviously maybe this was made before Pig, so that didn't get a shout out.
Yeah.
But I'm like, Valley Girl? No. None of the films he worked on with his uncle? No Rumblefish?
That's a missed opportunity I felt when I was watching it, because when they first did the scene with him in the car with the Valley Girl Nicolas Cage, I thought, okay, that's cool, that's funny, but you could have had other scenes with that same character, but make it a different role, like the Peggy Sue Got Married part, and he could do the freaking voice again, have him do the Moonstruck character, have him do, like, I don't know, Honeymoon in Vegas, like have him do his iconic roles talking to himself. And it's still a good film. I still enjoyed it. I just think you could have gone the extra mile. His whole filmography is so rich. You could have had other moments of other movies that people remember him from, not just the big blockbusters from the 90s.
Yeah, and it felt weird because since you say I'm a fan of artsy fartsy film, it could have gone, more of an artistic Being John Malkovich way.
Yeah.
And it didn't, and it chose not to. So it's more of a studio film, but you could also tell it must have a low budget because we're sticking with all the same locations. And, there's like no cameos from like other famous actors he's worked with or who might be his friends.
Okay, so about that, because I was reading about this before we came on. So apparently there were plans to have a number of celebrities cameoing. I think Quentin Tarantino was one. There were a few. He was the one that I noticed the most. but they were shooting during COVID. So
Oh,
a lot of those actors weren't able to do it, except for Demi Moore and David Gordon Green, which I'm not going to spoil what their roles are. They're not even really that big of a deal, to be honest.
yeah. I guess I was looking more for that. I was looking for more like the player type satire.
Yeah, yeah.
And here they were like, let's just go broad, you know, as broad as Nicolas Cage's movies or performances usually are. So, well, at least that explains a few things, like why it feels so small scale when it should feel a little bit better. I also think they missed out on a good musical sequence when Cage plays piano. Because I'll be honest, I thought he was going to do a song from Face Off, honestly, when he got to the piano. And it was just like, oh, just something he supposedly wrote himself. It was like, okay, you know. But like I said, I think if you are definitely even just kind of a minor Nicolas Cage fan, I think you will enjoy the movie overall. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you to rush out and go see it either. I think you can personally, I think you can wait. And that's my opinion.
Yeah.
But once it is on a streaming network, I think then it's worth seeing. But then again, since I'm also promoting people going to the movies, just see it, you know. It also doesn't help that I have the last two movies I've seen are near classics, and then I watch this, so it's like, yeah, this doesn't approach that. So that's why I'm like, it could be better, but I still think it's a good movie.
Uh-huh.
So that is our review for The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring the one, the only Nicolas Cage.